morning, Jim.
Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located
Recording
on the
in
back
progress
of the legislative chambers, and there is also an automatic external defibrillator that is available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. We'll begin with our Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Here. Commissioner Mike Boyle.
Present.
Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, June 15, 2021 as date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners voting in person.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to resolutions. Resolutions D, E, F, and G. Is there a motion to approve? We have one discussion item. Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners voting in person.
We have one discussion item, discussion regarding the real property valuation protest process. It's from Monty Bowman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Monty Bowman with Averus. We work on real property tax strategies for business owners. Going into the county assessor or the county board of equalization's website, there is a button that'll take you to the policies and procedures, and we've been sharing that very closely with every one of the taxpayers we represent because that page is kind of important. It specifically tells us what supportive documentation we can provide, what is some of the basic rules when it comes to evidence that we can provide to referees. So when reading that page, what I had given, there is quite a few questions that come up. It starts on the page talking about a recent purchase, but there's nothing in there to tell you what is recent. A common rule of thumb that comes up is the number 3, because also in here they'll talk about comparables, but they don't tell you how many. Generally, they'd like to see 3 comparables. They talk about getting profit and loss statements from customers. How many years? Well, the number again is 3. The date of an appraisal, again, it's generally 3 years from the date of creation. The number 3 comes up constantly. But there's nothing that can guide a regular taxpayer coming in to look at this to say, what do you mean by comparables? We also provided Ricketts, which was a case from 19 years ago at Turk, which says the taxpayer, if he wants to argue just the improvement value, he can argue just the improvement value. If he wants to argue just the land value, he can choose to do so. But there's nothing in Turk rules that says they also have to argue as an equalization over everything else. And the referees somewhere don't have those rules either. Some are playing by those rules, some are not. This page, if it was updated and annotated with some of those rules defined better and shared with referees prior to the hearing, everybody would be on the same page. So when we say a recent purchase, I know that if it was bought within the last 3 years, and the code automatically has a section that says that any normal arm's length transaction, every sale is considered that until it's proven to be otherwise. Those types of simple rules would lend support to where we had one last year and the referee said he bought it within 26 months ago. Well, it's quite inside the 3-year window. It was a recent purchase, but they didn't understand that rule. Another referee turned around on another one that was a recent purchase and recognized it as one. So they don't have this as a set of rules, and it's not defined enough to where when you say you can provide this, it doesn't really tell them what they specifically need. Profit and loss statement's great. How many? What do you need? Rent rolls, vacancy, occupancy statements. There's nothing that tells us how many. The rule on comparables is extremely important because we need to have that defined, because if we've got those rules and the referees do, then we'd have everybody on the same page on the rules on how comparables are supposed to work. I have a completed page of that, and we have the supportive documentation for each of those items that would be added. That includes comparative market analysis and broker's price opinions. Those 2 items are always prepared by a broker, which is where an appraiser gets a lot of their information when they create an appraisal. That's been in the code for 3 years, that's good supportive documentation that you can provide. These simple things I have already outlined. We're trying to prepare our protest, but I can't give them a copy of the page
1
as
minute.
it reads. What's that?
1 minute.
Okay, I can't give them a copy of the page as it reads. I'm trying to prepare their protest right now. The way I have a copy of it, I will provide that to Dan with all the supportive documentation. That's what I give to my clients so I can try to build a protest for them. I know the rules on comparables, but it's actually not being shared with all the referees, so it doesn't do me any good to put it together that way. So I'm here trying to get the guidance on how to prepare these protests this year so it can also be shared with the referees. Otherwise, I have to present all that evidence to them as to how they're supposed to take my evidence. That's the problem I'm having. So I don't know if I've got to build that argument for each and every case instead of it being here in front of them. That's the problem we're having.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for Monty? I'll speak with Dan and Catherine from our office about your concerns and see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners in person.
Please note, our Douglas County Board of Corrections is being postponed until next Tuesday. So we'll move right into the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle, Commissioner Mike Boyle,
Present.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Friend, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. And item B, approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve A and B? Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners voting in person.
Next is our consent agenda, items A through I. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Kavanaugh, can you turn your, let me see, hang on. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I'd ask that item C be set aside for discussion.
Okay, we'll take item C separately. Any other questions or comments? Okay, but
Sorry, one moment, please. Okay, Madam Chair, we're ready when you are.
okay, please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, all other commissioners voting in person.
We'll go back to item C. Item C is a resolution authorizing the addendum to the Deloitte task order to provide services related to administration of counties' American Rescue Plan funds and assist with reimbursement of COVID-19 vaccination expenses from FEMA and the state of Nebraska. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes, this is a waste of money. Deloitte had a contract with us under the CARES Act, which was a waste of money, basically telling us that our 2,100 plus employees are too stupid to do the administration necessary to facilitate the expenditure of these funds. I don't believe that. I don't believe in wasting money. We're in a crisis here with the pandemic, and giving a multinational corporation more money on top of the wasted money that was wasted under the CARES Act is a disservice to our needy residents who need assistance for a variety of needs during the pandemic. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this blatant waste of money.
Any other further questions or comments? Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
Yes, I would just like a line item detail about what that extra $157,000 would fund.
Okay.
Commissioners, I'm Joe Lorenz, County Finance Director, and so I just prepared a short information sheet on the Deloitte addendum that hopefully will answer most of these questions. So we're handing that out right now, and it's on the screen. So the request is for an amount not to exceed $200,000. Of that $200,000, $43,000 is rolling over from a previous task order with Deloitte that expired on May 31st. As what this task order does, it also extends the date to December 31st, 2021. So we're going to roll, the proposal is to roll $43,000 over and then add an incremental $157,000 of additional allocation that could be funded with ARPA dollars. This additional $156,000 equates to 0.3% of the county's $55.4 million award. The $200,000 is written on a not-to-exceed basis, which means the total amount of fees over this period running till the end of the calendar year would not exceed $200,000, with itemized bills to be sent to county administration for review and approval on a monthly basis. In working with the Deloitte team, they came up with an estimate that it would require 20 hours a week of Deloitte time, 16 from their managers, and 4 from the partner who's overseeing this project. And then if you go to the next page, are the services to be provided It would be assistance with reports to be filed with the Inspector General, which are the reporting requirements that come on a sometimes monthly, but certainly a quarterly detailed filing with the government that is fairly complex, and we want to make sure we do it right. The second point that they would provide assistance or services on would be compliance guidance with the use of ARPA funds. I've had discussions with people, and the guidelines are out there. They're not essentially that clear. There are concepts out there like the census tract, the computation of lost revenue, tax revenue that's eligible for reimbursement. Some of these things are actually quite complex to understand, and I think the team that deals with them would all feel more confidence if we could get guidance from people who have expertise specifically on how these should be administered. The third point, it would be assistance with creation of the audit files detailing the expenditures, putting them in a format so when the post-project audit comes from the Inspector General, we would have a portal with all the data available and a clear and clean audit trail, which would mean our odds of it having to give the government back any money would be significantly lessened. And finally, what it would do is they would provide support for the Douglas County Health Department request for reimbursement from NEMA-FEMA for vaccination expenses. And I know we had a little discussion on this yesterday in the pre-meeting, and I made some calls to Sarpy and Lancaster. And in looking at this, the Douglas County approach was kind of unique in that really the rest of the state, or all the other counties in the state and the county health departments, basically let the state take charge and fund and operate the vaccination process. So when I talked to Sarpy and Lancaster, they said they spent no money on vaccinations, that it was all run by the state. Douglas County took a different approach because we're unique in a lot of ways, and Dr. Poor and the health department, our health department really took the initiative and went out and set up the vaccination sites and contracted for the nurses, the locations, the security. But in the course of that, the health department and since it's a county department, we've incurred, at least 10, maybe closer to $20 million of vaccination expenses. And this is money that we have to be reimbursed for through this NEMA-FEMA process. And it's unique to us, but it's a lot of money, and I really feel that Deloitte will help us get this money back in an expedient manner, because NEMA-FEMA has a reputation of being hard to work with, oftentimes taking over a year to get payments made. And so this is really another area that they could support us in. So I'd be glad to answer any questions on why we're recommending this.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle, you started the question of this. Are you okay now, for now?
Yeah, I think the big issue I have is sometimes I feel like we go down a rabbit's hole with Deloitte. So I would rather, I know it sounds like it's a challenging thing to do, but I would rather have someone local do it. I know that area of expertise that Deloitte has, they may specialize in this, but at the same time, I think we've got a lot of smart local accountants that could take this on.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Mike Boyle?
What is the hourly rate that we're paying the most expensive auditor, Joe?
Well, that would be the partner, and I don't have that in front of me, but that probably is just like a partner in a major law firm. It would be in the excess of $300, $350 an hour.
I heard it was 600. That's just why I was asking.
600. That sounds. I don't believe it's that high.
Okay, $5.99. Anyway, I wanted to ask, what about some of the other people? I mean, if you go back to that slide you presented, I'm looking at the hours that are supposed to be worked, and there aren't many hours. I'm really curious about that. If you could go back to that slide. the first slide you
20
showed.
hours a week. And, you know, a lot of this is just,
Can you show the slide, please?
yeah, okay. The last one, yeah. So it's the fourth point. 20 hours a week, so that's about 2.5 days devoted. And that would be, you know, on this one, unlike, you know, when we retained them under the CARES Act, when they were running a call center for rental assistance, this is much more, we are using, and that's the other point, that this unit of Deloitte are not their auditors. This is the Deloitte Disaster Recovery Group. These are consultants, so it'd be, you know, they'd be basically advising us on things for compliance. You know, when we're looking at things, is this compliant with an allowed use of ARPA funds? So, you know, that would be one of the things where we'd pull all the material together and we would send it to them and say, you know, take a look at that. Do you think this is in accordance with the guidelines? It would also be when we make that monthly or quarterly filing, working with Deloitte and making sure that the filing goes through, it's an online filing into a fairly complex federal database, making sure that the data is appropriate and correct. And then also on things like, you know, we could have a conversation with them and they could tell us our best approach on working with NEMA and FEMA so we can get our reimbursement you know, in a timely fashion. So we're really using them not to do the work, we're using them as a consultant.
Well, that probably drives home my point even more. I think, frankly, Joe, I don't mean this to sound patronizing, but it will. I think you're fully qualified to handle this. And I'm also bothered by the fact that we do have some really talented local firms, and some of them are minorities, black and brown, and we also have women. And I really am bothered that we have to do this, and we're the only county in the state that's doing this. And I surely think that Sarpy and Lancaster, I know they took different approaches to the vaccine, but I just really feel like, you know, who came up with the $200,000 figure, by the way? Is that you or them?
That we went through what kind of services we would be looking for, and based on that, they came back to me with that estimate.
Well, that's bothersome too. I really think that we should direct this money toward the helping people and not another big Delaware corporation, like I said in the first place. I think we have the talent here in town, and I think it could be led by you. And I'm not criticizing how we bought the vaccine. We had to do what we had to do, but it's sort of more of the state of Nebraska kind of doing things for everybody else and kind of ignoring us, which has always bothered me a lot.
1 minute.
So anyway, I just disagree with the philosophy of this, and I have from the beginning. I think we have the talent, and frankly, again, I don't mean to be patronizing. I think it starts with you. I think you're fully capable of making this kind of a defense, and also putting together local teams that could assist you. So that's my objection. I think it ought to be redirected, and I'm not going to support this again.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Mike Friend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, you and I have talked about this just a little bit, and it's not going to be a surprise to you. I don't inherently like Deloitte. I've done research. I don't like their corporation. I don't like their standpoints. I don't like their attitude. I don't like their political attitude. There's all kinds of things I don't like about them. Okay, so let's set that aside for a minute. That's not the point. And maybe everybody else disagrees with me. Maybe they love Deloitte, but their attitudes and their standpoints are well chronicled. You can go look them up. The question that I would have for you is, and you already answered this, so I'll go to questions 2 and 3. You already answered the question why, and you laid it out fairly eloquently. I appreciate that. And once you answer that question why, that we should actually implement Deloitte, pick one. It doesn't matter. pick an organization that can actually handle the type of work that we're asking to do. The question then happens, the question then occurs, what happens if we don't implement Deloitte at this very moment? What occurs? And that's a question.
Yeah, I would say our level of risk goes up significantly in terms of doing something that may not be considered correct under the guidelines of after the fact having to come back and pay significant amount of monies back to the government that we've already committed. To the point is, I am going to be devoted to this project, and I'm going to be spending a lot more than 20 hours a week on this project, but I feel comfortable using Deloitte as a consultant and a sounding board to review things with, because that way I think our risk of doing things correctly, and not only just guidance, but also if you read stuff, both the CARES Act and a lot of these government programs have been full of fraud. There's a lot of people who have gone out there and defrauded these programs to the extent of billions of dollars. And having Deloitte there to oversee our methodology and our systems also reduces the possibility of fraud. And so I think it just significantly lowers the risk of fraud, ensures compliance, and makes this a much safer project for the county to spend these $55 million in funds.
Okay, and which begs the third question then. So let's say, and I agree with Commissioner Dr. Maureen Boyle, would be nice, and Commissioner Mike Boyle, frankly, Commissioner Kavanaugh too, it would be nice if we'd have a relationship with an organization locally that could handle this task at this very moment. But let's say that we made a decision to cut Deloitte loose, which would, I'd sleep fine at night, right? I already established that. But let's say we did. If we don't utilize this relationship right now, if we decide we don't want to utilize this relationship, what are our options here? So let's say we started picking people out and marching them up in front of us and say, can you get this job done? What's your professional opinion? Can they? I mean, are there organizations out there, either locally or regionally, that could actually handle this? EY is a large organization too that could probably handle this as well. Why was Deloitte picked as opposed to some of the others?
Well, Deloitte was originally picked when we looked at this because Deloitte has the contract with the state of Nebraska, and so it allowed us to piggyback on the state contract and then take a consistent approach on CARES Act money, which showed benefits in our dealings with, let's say, the city of Omaha, where we both had, gave $30 million, and that was coordinated. But to your point, can we do it locally? We could, but the local firms, they're auditors. They don't have this experience, so they'd be on a learning curve on our dime, essentially, which is most concerning to me. Well, Deloitte is set up, they're ready to go. I ask them something, they don't have the answer. They could call the Office of the Inspector General in Washington, D.C., and get right back to me with an answer. They, sometimes big isn't good. In this case, there are definite benefits to it.
Okay. I probably have about 20 seconds. Look, it begs the final question, what does government do well? I think government funds things. What does government do with other people's money? What does government not do well? In general, implementation. So I love our staff, I love the people here, and I love...
Time. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Joe, following up on what Commissioner Friend was talking about, we had Deloitte on contract for most of last year. Are we going to receive a final report of what they did for us and how much that cost?
Yeah, we could pull that. I mean, the contract just expired on May 31st, so we could do a summary through May 31st.
Right. I think the contract was extended once to go to May 31st.
Yes.
So if we could get, before we enter into a new contract, kind of an idea of what they've done for us, that to me would seem to be kind of good business sense. And then, I am aware of firms in the community who do work on both CARES and this, and have throughout this. I personally have attended numerous White House briefings on this exact funding source for many, many, many years. The city and the county have administered federal funds in big amounts, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't administer these as well. But it'd be good to know what we paid a lot of money for them to do so far. And I think that before we go into a new contract, we probably want to find out what they did for us originally, and maybe have some of the local talent available come before us and say what they can do, so that we have an informed decision to make before we just jump into another extension of a contract that we've never really gotten an accounting on in the first place. We're not spending any money right now of the Rescue Act funds, right?
No,
So
not yet.
there's no money at risk of us having to pay back unless or until we actually decide what we're going to spend it on. And we haven't had those discussions. Those discussions have not taken place. There's been no public discussion. There's been no citizen input as to what we're going to do with the $55 million this year and the $55 million next year, right?
No, but we have, the health department has spent $10 to $20 million on the vaccination process that we are trying to start the process of getting reimbursed for. And Deloitte has been assisting us on that. And, as a matter of fact, Tim Kelso's on the line, and he's been working a lot in this process. So, if you want to add any points on where you are in that process and where you see the value added from Deloitte, please go ahead.
Well, he can do that on his own time. What I'm
Okay.
saying is the accounting of what Deloitte has done for us, I think, is necessary before we go.
Yeah,
further down
that's
the
easy to
road.
do. I mean, they send me monthly bills and they haven't
Right, we've
spent
seen
anything.
none of those, so maybe.
I
we could
receive
lay
them
this
every
over
month.
until we
And they're
have
sent
that.
and paid by
I'm
the
sorry,
clerk's
I'm not done
office.
talking. Maybe we could lay this over until we have, that accounting so that we can maybe follow up on some of Commissioner Friend's ideas relative to local people who certainly are able to do what Deloitte's doing long distance. And I'm always in favor of spending local on everything that we can. If nothing else, it stimulates the economy. And so I would say maybe it would behoove us to lay this over for a few weeks. There's no rush. The money's not being spent. We haven't even had the discussion on how the money's going to be spent. So if and when we want to come back and do this after we've been informed of what's happened already, we can maybe revisit this at a future date.
If that was the motion, I'll second it.
Commissioner, wait a minute, Commissioner Boyle, you're next in line to speak.
Okay. I was just saying that if Mr. Kavanaugh made a motion to lay it over, I would second it.
Yeah, that's.
And I think, and maybe that's appropriate to vote on it now, but if we want more discussion, that's fine, whatever you feel is procedurally correct.
Thank you. Commissioner P.J. Morgan?
Well, a couple things. One is, I just assumed maybe if Tim did want to speak when Joe was talking, I think it'd be appropriate to listen. Then I have some other comments I'd make after that if Tim has some comments about this. I respect greatly the health department and all of Tim's qualifications.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is it appropriate to speak, Madam
Yes.
Chair?
Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you. Tim
Okay.
Kelso, Douglas County Health Department. I've been working with federal awards and grants for many, many years, decades, back into the early 80s, and back, I've known Mike since early 80s in office. And Mike, I have nothing but the utmost respect for you and your judgment. But on this issue, I think I need to respectfully disagree on one point, and that is the value this place that Deloitte brings to the process. I think it's important for everyone to understand that we have not, as of yet, been audited. and that's on the CARES Act, and has nothing to do yet with the ARPA funds. And so, as I view this, every dollar we're spending to have Deloitte come in and provide us some their consulting advice and guidance puts us in the best position possible for when those federal audits come around. And I don't think I need to remind anybody that when federal audits come around, if these expenses are rejected, they have to be paid back to the federal government. And here, there's a lot at risk. When you consider both CARES and ARPA, we're talking over $200 million that expenditures will be made and for which we could be held accountable. So, excuse me 1 minute. So, you know, the health department has been working very closely with Joe Lorenz, and no question, he's a very competent guy, very bright guy, really sharp. But what the Deloitte team brings is decades of experience in these very matters. Now, CARES Act is new, ARPA is new, so nobody can come in and say they've got experience in it until they've worked through it. And the thing about the information I've received and Joe's received from Deloitte throughout the first round of CARES Act, it's very well put together, very well thought out, and has always been based on the most recent version of the guidance. And in that regard, I just want to point out that while the initial guidance is out in draft form, like the CARES Act, the federal government changed those rules multiple times as times passed as to what was and wasn't allowable. So it's a bit of a crapshoot when you're trying to say, well, is this expense reimbursable or allowable, if you will, or not? And so it's been a huge help to have Kathy from Deloitte. She's the manager, and her experience, in addition to CARES, her major experience is in FEMA. And we have applied for and will be working to receive as much of a reimbursement for our expenses as possible from FEMA. And if we are successful in doing that, that frees up your ARPA funds for other uses. So
1 minute.
I really think they're tremendous at what they do, and their guidance has been extraordinary. I feel very comfortable if we were able to continue to work with them, and think we'd be in the best defensible position when the audits come around.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Friend and then back to you, Commissioner Morgan, since your time was up on this one.
Oh, because
So
didn't use my time.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'll have him pay me for that.
Commissioner Friend, this is your second time.
Sorry.
Second and last, Madam Chair, thank you. Look, I have a track record, I have a history, and I think that there's some lobbyists in this room that can verify it. I have a history of arguing with myself, okay? It's not what I'm doing here. I don't think we need to lay this over, okay? And the reason that I don't, and I respect the heck out of what Commissioner Kavanaugh has pointed out. There's a time and a place. What I was saying when I got done earlier is that government does things really well, and that's fund things, and disperse that funding appropriately. In my opinion, what government doesn't do very practically well is to actually implement stuff. So these relationships and these contracts are understandable. I get it. Doesn't matter what I feel about Deloitte. I know that they're competent. The point here right now, and it goes to the questions that I was begging earlier, is if we pull this back, A, what are we going to find out if we lay it over? So I know what the thought process is. We're going to get more information, and we're going to figure out exactly how Deloitte does their business. Well, I know how Deloitte does their business, and they're going to prevent us. We're going to get money from point A to point B really rapidly. Okay, that's my thought process. Second thing is, I know that other firms and other organizations can probably do that, and locally as well. So I'm all for that. But that decision should have been made about 9 months ago, when all of this stuff was actually occurring, and we knew CARES Act funding was coming in before the end of the year, last year, and then it's coming in again this year. Those decisions are way, and by the way, I don't have any problem going down the road and making decisions on all the contracts that we have, but we need time. We're going to lay this over for a week. What are we going to get out of it? And that's a legitimate question. That's not rhetorical. If we lay this over for a week and we address it next week, how much information? Commissioner Kavanaugh asked a really valid question. Are we going to get information that we can't have right now after we leave this meeting? Honestly.
Well, I don't think a week is going to do that. And I will say this, I would just ask that the board
Excuse me,
have...
Patrick, I think I was interrupted earlier, and I'd like to get the floor back for...
No, Commissioner Boyle, you were not interrupted, and Commissioner Friend has the floor right now.
Well,
Commissioner Boyle, you
Patrick-
don't have the floor. Thank you. Commissioner, go ahead, Patrick.
We've been working with Deloitte for months, and they've done, in our opinion, boots on the ground, working with them on a regular basis. They've done a fantastic job for us. They're giving us a tremendous confidence level as we try to protect the county board during this process. So we just ask, this is not Deloitte coming to us. This is us asking to continue using Deloitte and giving us that comfort level as we represent you and protect your interests as the county board. So we just ask as a staff that you have confidence in what we're asking for, and that you honor that and you grant this request. Thank you.
Commissioner Friend, are you finished? You have a, I can't see the.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I could bloviate more, but I won't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner P.J. Morgan?
Okay, let me be sure. I'm not sure if we have two motions or just one. What motion do we have?
A motion to approve in a second.
Okay. I'm not a fan of Deloitte's, but
Excuse me, there was a motion to lay over.
So I would call for, if that's the first motion, call for the question of the vote.
That's not proper.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. I'm going to look at our parliamentarian in sitting as a parliamentarian, just so I do this correct. So just nobody talk. There's a motion and a second on the floor to approve.
Yeah, there's not.
There was, go ahead, Chris.
There's no such thing as a motion to lay over. Either you're motioning to amend it or you're motioning to refer it to committee. So right now, there's one motion on the floor, and that's to lay over.
That's.
You mean to approve?
To approve.
To approve.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, so there is a motion to approve and a second. There then was a motion to lay over, and as rules, you either have to say it is referred to committee or amend the current motion on the floor. So what is the will of the board?
So that's the motion. That's the priority motion. You can bend it any way you
The
want to get
motion
your
is
approval.
on the floor is to approve. If you want a layover, please add a motion to amend the current motion on the
The
floor.
motion is to amend the current motion to lay it over.
Can I ask a point of order, Madam
Yes.
Chair? If you're amending the motion, you need to change it. So either you're asking to send it to committee. If you're not suggesting a change, there's no amendment. There's no amendment to lay over.
Well, that's the bizarrest twisting of Robert's Rules of Order I've ever heard. However, if that's what you
Do
want,
you
in
have
order to get to a vote on what we're trying to talk about, that's what we'll do.
Well, then let's do
amend
it.
to refer it to the Finance Committee for a hearing on what Deloitte's ever
Okay, a
done for
motion
us,
to
and B,
refer
what
to
this-
Finance Committee. Thank you, Commissioner Kavanaugh. Is there a second?
There's a second.
All right. There is a motion to refer to Finance Committee. Please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion fails. Commissioners Mike Boyle voting yes virtually, and Commissioner Maureen Boyle and Kavanaugh voting yes in person. All other commissioners voting no.
So we'll go back to the original motion to approve. Please vote.
Mrs. Borgerson, may I speak?
One moment, please.
No, Commissioner Boyle, you had your 2 times.
No, actually, I didn't. I was interrupted, but
No,
all I want
Commissioner
is
Boyle, you were not interrupted, so please, you were not interrupted. You had your 2 times.
I really didn't, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Please vote.
Commissioner Mike Boyle, how do you vote?
Put me down as objecting on strong grounds.
Okay.
Then he's not voting if he doesn't say yes or no.
I am voting no,
Thank you.
but I object on strong grounds.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting no virtually. Commissioner Kavanaugh, Maureen Boyle voting no in person. All other commissioners voting yes.
Okay. We'll move, thank you, Joe and Patrick. We'll move to recognition and proclamations. Our first one is a recognition of the following county employee who is retiring, Renee Hensley, who worked for the Douglas County Health Center for 21 years. And, oh, I'm sorry, Larry, what's up?
What's up? What do you think?
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. On this last discussion, I thank you for that. Is this possibly where we ought to open it up for a discussion of the rules?
No.
I'm not real clear as to what the difference between the parliamentary rule procedure and Robert's rules procedure. And
Larry, are you going to speak on the agenda item or not?
Who's maybe out of line and never gets called out of order?
Larry,
Thank
you're out of order. Thank you.
Mr. Boyle doesn't get called out of order, does he?
Larry,
Thank
I
you.
just called him out of order as well, so thank you. Again, there's a recognition for the following county employee retiring. Renee Hensley worked for the Douglas County Health Center for 21 years, and I do not believe Renee is here today. So do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Maureen Boyle. I just want to wish Renee, she's been a wonderful employee over at our health center for those 21 years, and she will sorely be missed, but we do wish her well on her retirement. Please vote.
Commissioner Mike Boyle, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Boyle, Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners voting in person.
Our next is a resolution recognizing June 21 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in Douglas County, and I've asked Commissioner Maureen Boyle to read the resolution.
Thank you. So whereas Douglas County cherishes the value and dignity of each person and appreciates the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas all are welcome in Douglas County to live, work, play, and every family in any shape deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, and supported by friends and neighbors. And whereas Douglas County denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as an affront to our fundamental principles. And whereas Pride Month began in June of 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City, after LGBTQ+ and allied friends rose up and fought against the constant police harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas Douglas County appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus community, which strengthen our social welfare. And whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And whereas we must acknowledge that the LGBTQ+ community has faced and continues to face systemic discrimination, including restricted rights, social stigma, challenges accessing healthcare and other basic social services, and startling rates of violence. And whereas despite being marginalized, LGBTQ+ people continue to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby recognizes June 2021 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in Douglas County and promotes the principles of equality, liberty, and justice, dated this 8th day of June, 2021.
Is that a motion
I
to?
present this as a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Maureen Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any comments?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. We all mean well. We all mean well, but sometimes we don't do well. I do believe there's a number of laws that say we will not pass special laws. So why do the taxpayers need to maybe face another lawsuit? On constitutional grounds, probably. Because you don't mention me, I'm a straight person. You see what's happening here? People are getting pitted against each other based on who they are. That's to be left to the private person in his own private home, not here. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I just want to say that there is a lot of efforts in Douglas County to support the LGBTQ plus community, and a lot of it is with businesses and also with nonprofits and organizations. So from that standpoint, I'd like to call out, shout out for Scout Dry Goods over at Dundee. Heartland B-Cycle, they have a program for these individuals. They get a free year pass on the bikes. And then also Culture House on 24th Street. It's a creative venue, and all kinds of artists are welcome there. I don't think this is a law. I think this is a resolution, and the board has every right. Well, all bodies have the right to pass resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments? Please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, other commissioners voting in person.
Next is a resolution recognizing June 21st as National Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month in Douglas County. I'm going to have asked Commissioner Mike Friend to read the resolution, and then there'll be a short YouTube clip that's played after the resolution. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas there are currently about 8 million people in the United States with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and whereas many cases of PTSD remain unreported, undiagnosed, and untreated due to a lack of awareness about PTSD and the persistent stigma associated with mental health conditions, and whereas many members of the armed forces are at high risk of PTSD and other mental disorders, and whereas in November 2020, Douglas County became a Hidden Heroes County, raising awareness about the issues military caregivers face and bringing critical resources to our community's hidden heroes, caring for the wounded, ill, and injured service members and veterans, and whereas public perceptions of PTSD or other mental health disorders create unique challenges for veterans seeking employment. And whereas PTSD significantly increases the risk of anxiety, depression, suicide, homelessness, and drug and alcohol-related disorders and deaths, especially if left untreated, and whereas everyone with PTSD, whether they are veterans or civilian survivors of sexual assault, serious accidents, natural disasters, or other traumatic events, must know that treatments do work and can lead to a better quality of life. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby recognizes June 2021 as National Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month in Douglas County.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Friend?
It is a motion.
Is there a second? There's a motion by Commissioner Friend, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. And Karen, do you want to hit the video, please?
Have you or someone you love ever been in a tornado or car accident, experienced sexual or physical abuse, served in a war zone? Most people have been through some kind of life-threatening or traumatic event, and it's common to have stress-related reactions after a trauma. But when symptoms last more than 3 months and they're not getting better, it's time to get help. Meet Sam. He recently returned from serving in Iraq. For many people, being in a crowded place like a baseball stadium or busy grocery store feels comfortable, but not for Sam. What should be a nice night out, taking his wife Tara to a restaurant, isn't fun for him anymore. He can only handle it if he sits with his back to the wall where he has a good view of the exits, and even then, he's too on edge to really enjoy it. At home, things aren't the way they used to be either. His sleep is restless at best, and some nights Tara isn't sure if Sam comes to bed at all. Sam seems to have a short fuse these days, and sometimes he snaps at Tara over tiny misunderstandings. What he and Tara never talk about is the trauma he experienced when he was deployed. He's never mentioned the guilt, the weight he carries around, wishing he could have done more to prevent what happened. Instead, he's turned inward, pulling away from family and friends. Tara tried to give him some space, but after months passing without change, she really started to worry. She was the one to finally say what they were both thinking: it's time to get help. That's when Sam finally decided to take action. He reached out to a doctor who told him about PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Sam's symptoms were getting in the way of enjoying his life. Re-experiencing, hyperarousal, feeling worse about yourself or the world, and avoidance are the 4 types of symptoms people with PTSD have. Sam's doctor explained each. The first is reliving the event, or re-experiencing. This is often an unwanted memory or even a flashback where you feel like you're right back in the situation again. Seeing, hearing, or even smelling something that reminds you of the trauma can trigger these. Nightmares where you relive parts of the event in your sleep are common too. The second is avoidance, staying away from situations that remind you of the trauma. That's why Sam tries to avoid thinking about painful memories altogether. He pours himself into his work or uses alcohol to keep his mind from going back to the trauma. The third is feeling worse about yourself or the world since the trauma. You might feel overwhelming guilt like Sam, or not trust anyone. You just might not be able to feel happy, even when you are around people you love. The fourth type of symptom is sudden rushes of anger, irritability, feeling jittery, always on alert, always on the lookout for danger. This is called hyperarousal, and loud noises or a driver cutting in front of you can be all it takes to set you off. If you recognize any of these symptoms of PTSD in yourself or someone you love, don't wait. See your doctor to find out if it could be PTSD. Just like Sam and Tara found, there is hope. You don't have to live with the symptoms of PTSD forever. Effective treatments are available. To learn more about PTSD or how to get help, visit the National Center for PTSD website at www.ptsd.va.gov.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any comments? I just thought it was important to show that video because, again, as this board is taking mental health issues as a priority, this was a good awareness, building awareness and educational piece on PTSD, which I think many folks in our community suffer. And if that reaches one, that then reaches out to get help, we've done our job, and that is what this is all about. So with that, no other questions or comments. Please vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle voting virtually, all other commissioners voting in person.
Thank you. Citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing, thank you, to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda?
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I'm submitting. Which may be part 3 or 4 or 5, I'm not real sure yet. But I do want to say that I think I and the citizens are due an apology, largely due to last week's behavior by this board and also at the city council. And my reason for saying it is because we will never have the discussions we need to have when people that profess to be in the BLM, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is a Marxist organization, which is antithetical to this constitutional republic. Actually, it's a compound constitutional republic, set in this chamber, in their seats, while we profess our pledge of allegiance to the country and the flag, a republic for which it stands. And there's nobody in this chamber, up there or in the audience, protested it. Yet you walked me out for using the word bullshit. If you need to walk me out again, please do. But Mike Boyle turned right around there on the screen right after you dismissed me and used the word himself. And when I try to say, well, may I reply to those comments? Obviously, no. That is not citizens being able to petition their government. Your rules need to be changed. The rules are not fair to the citizens that elected you. That needs to be a large debate, not a 5-minute can't comment to you type thing. We're supposed to be able to discuss with our representatives. If we cannot, that means there's been a revolution. When you allow people, Marxist organization who do not believe anybody's life matters, you have had a revolution. Plain and simple. Wake up, pay attention, and let's heal this country. Let's stop pitting each other against each other. I don't care if you're white, yellow, green, purple, whatever. But if you want to act like an enemy, I'll treat you like an enemy. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the board about an issue not on the agenda?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. Can I speak on an item that was disposed? Okay, I'll speak about your rules then. Robert's Rules of Order does allow for postponement of consideration. And unfortunately, the parliamentarian is biased and did not point out that what the intent of a member with privilege, that they wanted to postpone consideration. He did not, Mr. Rogers did not lay it out for the board. Instead, he chose what the board could do, which was send it to committee, back to committee, which was not the intent of any member here. Or what was the other one? Send to committee or amend, which was not the intent at all either. So this is the kind of things that makes the citizens feel like the county is being had, because it is, at the direction of the parliamentarian. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to our presentations. Our first one is our COVID update and COVID-19 vaccination plan update by Dr. Adi Poor. Good morning, Dr. Poor.
Good morning, County Commissioners. And again, thank you for letting me come in on Zoom. So I was able to hear what some of the experts at UNMC had to tell us and finished just right now. And it's always very helpful for me. So let me talk to you a little bit again about the cases and what we are seeing. We are seeing a 7-day rolling average of 2.3 new cases per 100,000. And if you look at the US average, that is 4 cases per 100,000. We are right now, as it stands, the 3rd best state per capita in the United States with our low incidence rate. When you look at it per cases for Douglas County, on a 7-day average, it's about 13 cases that we have in our community every day right now. We had 15 today as I just looked at it. That is a really good trend, but it is still 15 cases every day, and we cannot forget this. And I could use what Chancellor Gold just told us. He quoted Yogi Bear, "It's not over till it's over." And I do think we need to have that in front of our minds. When we look at the total positive cases, we have 71,920 in Douglas County, 67,549 have recovered. So potentially 4,371 individuals still have symptoms or have been diagnosed very recently. I cannot say enough for how many tests we have conducted in Douglas County. We have conducted more than 1 million tests, actually 1,048,575 tests. And the testing goes on, and we need to make sure that we encourage everybody who has symptoms or had an exposure to potentially get tested. Our decreases have now been for 8 weeks in a row. We have seen decreases in cases. And from the week before to last week, we had a 29% decrease. From the last time I talked to you 2 weeks ago, we have a 59% decrease. So the discussion now is that decrease due because we see less testing going on in our community, and in many smaller communities, that's what you are seeing at this time. However, when we look at our data, we only saw a decrease of about 9.6% from testing 2 weeks ago. And so testing is still going on strong, and we need to continue that, especially with Test Nebraska potentially closing up at the end of June 30th. So that means that healthcare providers now have the chance to get testing done through MPHL. They are getting the equipment for testing right now so that we can continue the testing efforts that are going on in Douglas County. Hospitalization is a good story too. So we have 25 COVID patients as of last night in our Omaha area hospitals. That's 5 days in a row where we are in the 20s. We have 8 of them in the ICU and 3 of them on the ventilators. 3 of them. Compare that to 10 when I talked to you last. We are having 726 total deaths that are related to COVID. 3 of them have been fully vaccinated. So let's talk a little bit about the vaccination. So we have administered a total of 597,550 doses. 514,103 were administered to Douglas County residents. We have 281,129 residents that have at least 1 dose. We have 250, 250,000 of them who are fully vaccinated. And that is 250,653. That's 45.2% 2% of our total population is fully vaccinated, and 50.7%, or more than half, have received at least one dose. I always like to make sure we are getting the goal that the president laid out, which is by July 4th, 70% of our adult population, meaning those 18 above, have received at least one dose. We are, as of yesterday, at 64.6%. We need to work very diligently and continuously, but I think we have a chance to actually get to that 70%. 58.2% of our adult population is fully vaccinated. We still have difficulties in our minority communities. When you look at it, how our contribution goes, in our white Caucasian population, 50% who actually are eligible to be vaccinated have been vaccinated. And in our African American, only 30.4%. So kind of you see that 20% gap that is occurring. Native Americans, 41.8% of their population has received one dose, and Asians are number one. 51.9% of our Asian population has received at least one dose, even more percentage-wise than our white Caucasian. Hispanics, 38.4%, and that is a good number. When we look at our age groups, the highest increase has occurred in our 16 to 19 years old. Somebody is really trying to get a hold of me. I think just one thing that I learned on the call an hour ago was in regards to long-term care facilities. And we had ICAP on the call who shared with us that within the last week, for the first time, there are no residents that tested positive for COVID-19 in all long-term care facility for an entire week, and 3 staff have tested positive only. So I think we need to celebrate, and it just tells us that, vaccines work. Let me tell you a little bit about our efforts that are going on in regards to bringing the vaccine to our community. So last Friday night, we had a pop-up vaccine clinic at the Benson Days. And it started out slow till one of the media channels helped us out. They actually reported from the site, and suddenly people came and we saw it on the news, and therefore we came over here. So we vaccinated more than 25 individuals during a short 3-hour time frame, when people were there just to celebrate and really be out and enjoy it. And that's what we are learning now, that this is really one of the most effective ways to get the vaccine to individuals. On Saturday, we were at 2 different churches. On Sunday, the Methodist van was at the Tri-Faith campus. This week, we are just full and we are everywhere. And if you see our van, it's going to get a very nice mark around it, so people recognize us everywhere where we are. We have a small tent in front of it just because of the weather. Yesterday, we were at Centro Pastoral, Tepeyac, at the Heartland Family Service Intergenerational Campus. Today, we are at Trinity Lutheran Church. Tomorrow, we are at the barbershop, Youngblood Barbershop at Ames and 40th. We are also going to be at the Henry Dorley Stewart Children's Hospital, and they are going to try to provide some incentives to the individuals who are going to be there. We are also going to be at Salem Baptist Church, do a drive-through tomorrow. On Thursday, we are Pleasant Green Baptist Church. And on Friday, of course, we have our clinic here, but we are also going to be at the Heart Ministry. On Saturday, we are going to be at churches, Clare Memorial Church, and we are going to be at the Cinco de Mayo, and we are going to be at New Life Presbyterian Church. Many of you saw the town halls that were held with North Omaha churches on Saturday. to really make sure that everybody has the information that they need to make their decisions. We can put the options out there. The vaccine is here, but if people still have questions about it, if they are hesitant about it, we also need to provide them the information. We have now a collaboration again with the schools because the schools are worried. Fall is going to start and they know they don't want their classes to be interrupted again. And so really for them, the encouragement for vaccine for students above 12 years of age is really high on their mind. And so we are doing 9 different pop-up clinics, mainly in the middle school districts, but everyone from every school can come. They are going to be at athletic events. They are going to be at fall orientation. They are just going to pop up everywhere so that when parents go to these events, be it to an athletic event, and their child has not been vaccinated but is eligible to be vaccinated, they have a chance to do it right then and there. Every shot is really helping us have a less disrupted life. Right now, we are at the swim trials, working with them in regards to they have a very good testing protocol that is going on. But once individuals, athletic individuals will be identified, we'll then help them do contact tracing. We are also working very closely with the College World Series at this time to really have a good collaboration going. So, in closing, I do think there are 2 things that are really high on our mind. And one is we need to have more information from our researcher and scientists in regards to what does this vaccine do to individuals who are immunocompromised, who, for example, had organ transplants or so on. And we hear physicians giving different answers. Right now, as I just heard this morning, the word is still out and we really need to learn more as time goes on, but we need to be protective of those individuals. And then the next question is, when is the next vaccine going to be approved for children 5 to 12 years of age? Is that going to happen before fall, or when is that going to come along? We hear Moderna and Pfizer, both of them are in their last stages of going for FDA approval pretty soon. So those are kind of our 2 things that are on our mind at this time. So now I'll just open it up if any of you have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Poor. Let's see, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Thanks for this, Doctor. Just a couple of metrics. How many people have died in Douglas County of COVID?
726. And this could be related to COVID but COVID was on their death certificate.
And on the positivity rate, what's that at?
Oh, you are catching me.
I'm sorry.
I don't even have it in front of me, Commissioner, but
That's
I can send it to you later on. Let me see if I have.
That's fine. I recall that you have in previous reports to us indicated that there's kind of a positivity rate that we want to get at or below. And I was wondering what ours is to see if we are at that or below that rate right now.
I can tell you for sure we are below that, Commissioner. And if you give me a few minutes later on, you may ask some other question. I may be able to find.
I appreciate that. I was glad to hear that you were at Benson First Friday. I'm a Benson business owner, and I'm appreciative of the health department reaching out. I was actually at Taste of Omaha in Elmwood Park, which had tens of thousands of people at it. And I think if we were able to coordinate with our county-funded visitor improvement gatherings like that, and certainly College World Series is one of them, Benson First Fridays is one of them, we would be able to target really big crowds here going forward through the summer. For instance, the Ralston 4th of July celebration is the largest in the state, tens of thousands of people, like Cinco de Mayo. I think we can supply you with that information so that you can go target those if you care to going forward, because there's a whole series of them coming up. The Taste of Omaha ran over 3 days in Elmwood Park, and there were, like I said, tens of thousands of people there all across the spectrum, age-wise, and very diverse. It was a great crowd. So if we could grab venues like that going forward, I think that would enhance the effort that you've got to get us to that 70% by the 4th of July.
I completely agree with you, Commissioner, and we are also in discussion with Vic government about the farmers market. I think especially the farmers market on Sunday, there is some interest to have us be at those farmers market too. So anything and everywhere we can go, we need to be able to do it at this time. We have 5 vans at the health department at this time, and we have, I think, 3 tents potentially, so we can go out with our nurses to do vaccinations.
That's great. I'll make a point of asking our staff to get that list to you, because farmers market is on there, I think, as well. But it's really good that you're doing these pop-ups. I think that's a magnificent way to reach the community that maybe otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity. We need to make it as easy as possible for everybody to get their shots, and so kudos for you for doing that.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle.
Hello, Dr. Poor, are you ready?
I know, I'm putting my seatbelt on.
There you go.
The question comes.
All right, I'll throw you some softballs first. One is, can you just reaffirm what mask recommendations you would suggest? I know that the city does not have a mask mandate at this point, but what do you feel is the best practice as far as keeping our community safe and mask wearing?
So I would say the best practice is, if you are not vaccinated, wear a mask. That would be my recommendation at this time, and my strong recommendation at this time. If you are fully vaccinated, there is no need for you to wear a mask. If you are one of those vulnerable individuals who potentially may not have a full protection from the vaccine, immunocompromised, organ transplant, you also may want to wear a mask to protect yourself. That would be my recommendation.
So in settings like this, when we're at the county board meetings, we can not wear our masks, we're in the hallways, we don't have to wear our masks.
I feel very comfortable that the data shows us that the transmission rate is very low when you are vaccinated. So this type of setup would be fine in my mind.
Very good, very good. Then what are the demographics of those folks who have been vaccinated and have died from it? And also, do you have any demographics on those that are currently hospitalized? I know you said the rate has increased among adolescents, but what about hospitalizations?
I don't have data, because the hospitalizations, it varies so much from day to day, and not all of the hospitals are participating in what we are calling SYNC, which is the electronic medical record. So we don't know. We are hearing that it is more the younger population who is hospitalized, but you would expect that, because those are potentially the individuals who are not vaccinated. So the demographics on those who died, those 3 of them, they all had serious underlying illnesses. I just have to share that with you. And so it always makes it a little bit hard. Did COVID contribute to their death? And in many cases, it probably did. It shortened their life even more so. So the ages, they were older, they were in 60 and above.
Okay, good. And then do you have any concern about the variants and the ability of the current vaccine to treat them?
So that's a good question. And you probably all have heard about the Delta variant, which is the variant that is now coming from India. And we haven't seen it actually in Nebraska yet, but you heard some of the reports in the New York Times. Britain really has seen the variant, and that variant has really high transmission rate. But what it has shown is that the vaccine is still working, and they have less hospitalization and less death. So we are still at this time saying the vaccine seems to be working against all the different variants.
Very good. And then do you have any data or just any experience with the long haulers and what, I know that's a tough thing to track, but what can you tell us? What do you know?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. And, we hear about it, and we hear more and more that UNMC actually has a clinic now for long haulers that should get some traction there. So individuals have groups and have physicians who can study what that looks like. But that's about all we have at this time. No more information.
Okay, and then I know way at the beginning we were talking about reaching, quote, herd immunity and thinking about 65 to 70% of the population should be vaccinated before we can feel comfortable that, I don't want to say we have this beat, that we have this beat, but that it's more manageable. Do you think we'll ever get to that point, or do you think that that percentage is something that we need to still hang our hat on?
I do think the second, probably. I'm not sure that we are going to reach 70%, but I also am not sure if that is really the metrics that we need to work with, because we have seen from Israel very closely that when you reach 55, 60%, the case rates really drops dramatically. So I would say let's not put a lot of emphasis on these metrics, but really the metric is the hospitalization, death, as well as cases in our community.
Yes, yes. All right, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Poor? I just have one, Dr. Poor. I know there's been some conversation about needing a booster after, the timeline has kind of changed as the discussions have changed. Do you have the most updated information on that?
The most updated information, Commissioner Borgeson, I would say, is we are studying it. Researchers are telling us just again this morning, now we have 6 months. Now we know that a booster after 6 months is not necessary. So how long does it go out? And so I think most of the researchers are stepping back a little bit and say, let's study this first before we run out and think a booster is necessary. You heard some of the CEOs from Pfizer, Moderna saying, boosters, we are making boosters already, but those are not the scientists. So I do think we need to look at the studies that really show how long antibodies stay with the individuals.
And that leads to my next question about antibodies. And again, probably the most vulnerable population we have to really look at in terms of not only the antibodies, but the booster issue are our elderly, our older Americans, because those are the ones that we actually vaccinated high up on the priority list. So do you know if there's studies being done on antibodies on the elderly as well as the immunocompromised individuals?
I would have to say I know more about the immunocompromised individuals, that there are studies going on in them than on the elderly. But I'm sure there are also some studies going on the elder population.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Poor? Again, thank you for being with us this morning, Dr. Poor.
Commissioner, can I just make one comment?
Sure.
I do have the answer for Commissioner Kavanaugh. Our positivity rate by report date is 1.5.
Ah, nice.
Thank you.
Great.
And, our metrics was it has to be below 5. Right. So we are making great progress. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Our next presentation, sorry, Louise.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Boyle.
Hello, Mike.
Louise?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I thought that was great what Dr. Poor was talking about, that you were having pop-ups, vaccination pop-ups. I agree with Mr. Kavanaugh, Commissioner Kavanaugh, that you probably want to get the health department a list of opportunities. Cinco de Mayo parade is going to be on June 12th. And I know this because the city council approved closing off the street for the parade. I don't have the details in front of me, but that's going to be on June 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to our next presentation, and that is our year-end legislative review by our lobbyists, Mr. Sean Kelly and Ms. Julia Plucker. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Douglas County Board of Commissioners, Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. Appearing today to give you a year-end legislative report, as we do every year when the session is over, and that's the greatest news that I have for you is the legislative session is over. They adjourned May 27th, sine die on.
Sean, can you pull the microphones
Yep,
towards
you
there
bet.
go.
Is that better?
Yep.
On May 27th, on the 84th legislative day. So they adjourned 6 legislative days early, mainly in part because of a special session that will occur likely in mid-September on redistricting. So they'll be back for who knows for how long. I would estimate probably 10 or so legislative days to go ahead and get the redistricting done. They have to have that done by October 1st. So that's their timeline on that. This session, there were 684 bills introduced. In total, 200 of those were passed. 3 of them were veto overrides. So the governor vetoed 3 bills. He did not veto anything in the budget. Of the 104 priority bills, 79 of those passed. I believe 19 failed to advance, 6 were held in committee. In total, there were 10 bills that were subject to a filibuster. That number is a little inflated towards the end of the session. There were numerous filibusters that were done, but typically, as we've seen with term limits and different speaker rules, there's been more filibusters in the past. So I think the increased number of hours to successfully wage a filibuster limited a lot of those. Of the Douglas County Board resolutions, this board took 17 positions on bills. 9 received favorable outcomes. 8 of those resolutions will be a carryover for next year. Most of those bill or resolutions are a support position on legislative items. I would emphasize 2 areas where certainly you as commissioners are aware that the legislature had a lot of discussion and interest from our perspective, and that's the inheritance tax and your ability to levy a property tax on a year-to-year basis, and what kind of growth counties can have across the state. So that received a lot of attention. As you may recall, LB 408 did fail due to a filibuster, but LB 310, which is an amended, modified version of limiting inheritance tax revenues, is on general file. So I think that is going to be a bill we'll be working on here in the interim and in the 2022 session. In the report, I noted 111 interim studies. Of course, many are of interest to the Douglas County Board, as always. I don't know if there's any entity in the state that has more at stake in the legislature than the Douglas County Board. So several of those I noted. So with that, I'd just like to thank the staff, commissioners, for all the help you provided Julie and I throughout the session. It's a trying effort every year, especially this year with the COVID protocols. Our interaction with legislators was very limited to start. It eased up over time as vaccinations rolled out. But it was a challenging session, and hopefully in January of 2022, it'll get back to a normal course, at least procedurally wise. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Commissioner Mike Friend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Sean. Hey, thanks for the update and the review. Do you know if one of those, I should know this, but I don't. Do you know if one of those 111 interim studies had anything to do or has anything to do with the state potentially getting involved in an idea of a purchase of the Douglas County Youth Center by chance?
I do
you
not.
remember?
Not specifically. I suppose you could tie maybe a legislative resolution to that theory, but as far as I know, no, I don't believe so.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner P.J. Morgan.
Sean, really appreciate you and Julie and the job you do and the way you basically meet with the senators. And I have heard it from some of the state senators, the procedure and the way that you respect and handle these matters. And I feel we're fortunate to have you as our county lobbyist. and the communication is great. Make sure that if there's some interim studies that you think maybe some of us should attend, alert us to those if it's on property taxes or whatever ahead of time, so we might be able to attend, because I know that's still a priority, or any other matters that might be worthy of participating in at least that discussion, or maybe contributing to it as we go forward on these interim studies. So we thank you again for the excellent service you give.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely. As you know, state senators always like to hear from elected officials, so that'd be helpful.
Great.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Sean, thanks for your great work. You and Julia do a super job. And, I'm interested in your report because sometimes you really do good work for us by stopping bad things from happening as much as, maybe passing something that we would want to see happen. And in this session, I think that your report reflects that of stopping things that would have deprived the county of revenue sources that could be severe from a budget point of view. And that's a big thing. So playing defense doesn't always get the credit that it deserves, but you did a great job there, and I appreciate it. Also, stopping the state from continually loading us up with unfunded mandates is another kind of, I know, unsung accomplishment that you're great at, and so I appreciate that. I constantly hear from senators near and far how well you represent Douglas County. I just want to pass that on because there usually isn't an awards banquet for lobbyists.
Nor should there be, but
there
but
probably
fair.
should be, but in this case, you folks really deserve thank you from the taxpayers of Douglas County for doing a great job, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. It's hard to go undefeated on unfunded mandates, but we were pretty close this year.
Thanks a lot.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to offer my thank you to both of you for the work that you've done. You hit it on the nail on the head, Sean, when you said it was a little bit different legislative session starting out, where we didn't really have contact with the senators like we normally do, which I think actually hurt us to some level, but you guys did a great job of getting to them in different ways than the norm. So appreciate all the hard work that you do for us and on behalf of the taxpayers. So thank you.
No, thank you, and again, thanks to the staff and the row offices that helped us out through amendments and whatnot, and answering questions throughout the session.
I know Marcos, I'm going to speak for him, but I know that he too thanks you. And again, the communication is stellar between you guys and Marcos and the staff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Larry?
Good morning. Thank you. Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I want to thank them for the work that they do, although I'm not all knowledgeable about the laws that you have supported or not supported. But you do represent us, so I assume that those were to my benefit. But I don't know that because you never define which ones mean what to me. In these chambers, I would think that you would. So I would like to ask in the upcoming session that you all define some of those things a little better. Not every citizen can go online and find on your agendas the attachments that really explain anything very well. But there's one I'd like to single out, and that is LR 14 for all of you to support because it's in the Constitution, the Convention of States. Even our state constitution talks about having a convention to amend the Constitution of the state of Nebraska. So why would you not support it as a federal constitutional method of change, altering, or throwing off of that government that's not doing their job? Right there, and you're sworn to support it. So you should support it down there. And how many years have they failed to do anything with it? How many years have they changed it? But how many years have they not really understood it? If you read it very simply, there are two clauses. If you read it more than very simply, from a logic standpoint and a historical standpoint, what the fathers meant, there's a third clause. Congress means the Congress. State legislatures mean the state legislatures. Founding fathers were very precise. So when they say the states, they are talking about every individual state and the people of that state who sent them to an interstate convention to come up with the Articles of Confederation and various other things, even during the French and Indian War. Historic. Citizens doing that, not legislators. So you need to clarify for the people down there who even want to pass the Faithful Delegate Act. I think maybe somebody killed it finally, telling us who they want, who they are going to say, who will be delegates, and what those delegates can say or not say, and what rules they. That's not what the Founding Fathers said. They don't understand down there in Lincoln. But maybe they're being pressured by those ultra-progressive groups like Wolfpack and the Convention of States Project. They don't understand that one main point, that the Constitution came because of people, not because of legislatures. They had people that would write all night to give them instructions. But we're not allowed to give instructions to our elected people. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? All right. Well, thank you very much again, Sean and Julia. Thank you. Our last presentation is by Tom Wellenweber. It is on Community Survey Panels program, and this was a program, again, that I learned about at our National Association, and I'll let them go into more detail, but it's basically a free survey service to Douglas County on some of our most critical issues. And as we just heard from Dr. Adi Poor, we still have folks that are a little bit hesitant on getting the vaccine. So for example, there's a survey about vaccine hesitancy. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to Todd, and I think he has a partner here with him, and they're going to give us a short presentation on this program, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So Todd?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, thank you. I have Alan Wharton. He's our founder and CEO of Community Data Platforms, and we're going to take our 5 to 10 minutes to run you through how the process works, the toolkit, and building a community survey for Douglas County.
Thanks, Commissioner, and thanks, Todd. And I have a presentation that I'll pull up, and we will be efficient with your time. You know, the problem we identified and that we've spent a good amount of time talking to NACO about is that communities really aren't reliably understood or understood to the extent leaders would like. And what we believe is that data can really bring a lot of clarity. This vision of fuzziness, which you experience, particularly in the middle of a pandemic, can be made much more clear with data. And so our mission is pretty simple. We really just want communities to be better understood so they can be better served. And we do it with two tools. One are something called data assets that are reliable and come from a variety of sources, and then leading analytics. And our belief and our experience is by putting those two things together, we can help leaders really understand what's happening. And one of the things NACO really liked was our model, which is pretty simple. Imagine this community data resource is created, and imagine we get enterprises to actually pay for it, and then communities and organizations and constituents or stakeholders can benefit. So we're working now in Boone County and in Travis County, Little Rock, and we're working in about a dozen communities now. And NACO has been a leader in this program, but we'll also be launching trials with Easter Seals, the Urban League, and the Conference of Mayors. So specifically, what we're talking about are the launch of community survey panels. And while we're not really big on taglines, we do appreciate the bottom one here in blue, which says, there has literally never been a more important time to know. And so the goals of the program are really simple, but the goal, one of the goals is to have a big impact. So we're building community survey panels. All that means is it's a large, diverse group of folks that can be reached through email or social media. We seek their feedback to the sorts of surveys Commissioner Borgensen mentioned. You talked about vaccine hesitancy, but we've also spoken with the Commissioner about ARP. You talked about $55 million coming to your community. So far, it sounds like it's unallocated. You might benefit by knowing what your constituents think of various priorities. There are also issues of equity that you've addressed in your meeting, economic development, public safety, and education. And what we do is we then understand from these surveys what folks think. We're able to bring analytics so that we're sure that we're surveying the right percentage of people, not too many men or too many women or too many young or too many old, but making sure we have the right balance that reflects Douglas County. And so it's a program that's very easy to start. In Travis County, we had a meeting like this, and a week later, we had a survey in the market. So we provide all the content that your communications team would need. The county then broadcasts this through social media and through email. Participants take the survey. They are at the end invited to join the Douglas County survey panel. And they also can opt in to take commercial surveys completely at their option, and they would get some rewards or some compensation. And this is essentially how the program gets paid for. Enterprises will want to talk to whoever on the Douglas County survey panel would like to take a survey for JetBlue or Levi Strauss, as an example. And so our job is to manage the panel, undertake analytics. We have about 30 data scientists, social scientists, and survey methodologists. And you'll get a dashboard that will explain to you with pretty good detail how people view the sorts of issues that we described earlier. And one quick example is we know that localities are unique. And so this was about a vaccine hesitancy survey. And in Sarasota County, we saw the most hesitant folks were men. But in Fairfield County, Connecticut, it was women. Education levels, we tend to think that those who are less educated are most hesitant. Not true. In Sarasota, we found the most hesitant people had graduate degrees. We asked who they trust. I'm speaking to you from Maryland. Governor Hogan talked about using celebrities to do public service announcements. We can tell you that celebrities rank very low on the trust level, but doctors and public health organizations rank very high. And in Sarasota, it's an older population. Their news source is television. In Fairfield County, we know the median income is lower, the median age is lower, and online news is where people turn to get their news. So what's next is, if you think this is a good idea, we would love to speak with folks in your communications department. We'll provide some more info to them. We can onboard them in 20 to 30 minutes. It's meant to be really simple. We have a ton of empathy for how busy you all are. As I mentioned with Travis County, we launched in a week. A few weeks later, we had results. And then Commissioner Borgensen has given us a range of issues that the county cares about, and we could stack those up and essentially on a monthly basis unveil a new survey. And so we end sort of where we started, which is we really want to help communities get answers. We're delighted to partner with NACO. We're delighted to offer this to counties at no cost. And I'd be happy to take any questions you have. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for that very quick but detailed presentation. Are there any questions? Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
Yeah, I think this would be great to get information this way. The question I have is when you mention the demographics, what do you do to make sure that people aren't padding the survey? You know, so I know you're able to break it down by male versus female, age or whatever, but if people have their 30 friends that are trying to buy us something, what are you doing to vet that out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I often speak of it in the context of soccer moms. Right, the county might say, would we like more soccer fields? And the risk is 200 soccer moms get their hands on the survey. So it's something we think a lot about. Essentially, because we have a variety of data sets, we will be able to look at Douglas County, and by using commercial data and public data, we will understand what is the shape of the county. How many old, young, black, brown, white, poor. And we will have that as a standard. And then as results come in, we'll be able to overweight or underweight groups. Too many soccer moms, they will get underweighted. Too few senior citizens, they could get overweighted. And if with Travis County, we actually saw people of color had responded less frequently than we needed. They made a push through some partnerships with community groups to get more folks of color. There was added participation. We were then able to weight all the various groups correctly and give them something really reliable. So we start with a standard, which is a database demographic makeup of the community, and then we survey, and to the extent we get too many senior citizens, we can underweight those, and too few young people, we can overweight those. So, and if for some reason the survey comes back and we don't have high confidence in it, we would report that, and then we would say, who else do you know? Should we go to someone in the city? Should we go to United Way? How do we build representation in the survey panel? So it's not a one and done. The goal is to increase the diversity of the panel with each survey. In most cases, we've been able to achieve it in the first survey.
And then another question I have too is, are these, do you have surveys that are already modules and set up so that you can determine clinical or statistical significance as a result, or are these just surveys, you know, what did you have for dinner last night? I mean, how detailed, how tailored are they? Are you, when you spoke with Commissioner Borgerson, were you able to say, or was she able to say, these 5 things are something of concern in our community, and then do you pull it off a shelf and say, this is what we do with other counties too?
Yeah, as much as we appreciate the uniqueness of various communities, the truth is you're struggling with similar issues: vaccine, economic development, equity, et cetera. So we're working with NACO and other large organizations to develop survey topics that are common. The benefit is that you can then benchmark across the country. Having said that, we do look for opportunities within the survey. So the ARP survey, for instance, will be asking a series of general questions about how folks want that money to be spent. But we've also developed a question where you would be able to drop in, geez, within Douglas County, how about help us rank these 5 specific local priorities for funding? So we try to balance the ability to scale surveys. We can't, as a free program, we can't develop custom surveys for every county every month across the country. So we're finding ones that have broad interest, but then within those surveys, there are spots where you'll be able to ask specific questions that affect folks in Douglas County.
And then once you get that data from all these different counties, do you feed that back to the counties again? Do we have access to that to determine like what other like do you make more surveys off of it basically, or are you just using that data? You're done with that particular project and it's done.
Most counties are really interested in their own data. But we have spoken with NACO, for instance, as an opportunity to feed all of that data back to NACO so they can look at benchmarking at a state level or at a national level. So we're totally open to the sharing of anonymized data, not individual responses, but anonymized aggregated data. No problem.
All right, good. Thanks a lot.
Commissioner Mike Friend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alan, thanks for the presentation. Hey, on one of your slides, and you may have alluded to this, I missed it, so forgive me if I did. One of the things that you laid out was a social media reach, for gathering some of the data. Now, I'm a baby boomer, and I've used Twitter, Facebook, and I heavily utilize LinkedIn, right? But my kids from 28 all the way down to 21, Snapchat, Reddit, Instagram, all these places that I don't like to go. So that's where they're at. Is the social media reach that you showed on the slide all encompassing, or are we heading down a road that encompasses those two, right?
Yeah, the goal is to broadcast the survey, and so I can talk to you about Austin. Mayor Adler is a well-regarded mayor. He had 5,000 email addresses, but 50,000 social media followers, mostly Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And so we were able to develop content so that the city of Austin was able to push it out by email in addition to those social media assets. So to the extent your comms people say, hey, we have 20-year-olds who are interested in Snapchat, whatever resources your communications team feels they need to broadcast the survey, we will develop and deliver to you.
Okay, great. I suspected that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Dan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to request Mr. Wallenweber or Mr. Warden if they could provide you the presentation they did today.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Happy to do it.
Anyone else? Larry?
I really do not terribly enjoy the things that I do have to say. But adding to my last trip up here, this is just another thing of, oh my God, there's somebody else out there that's in control. Now, if you go back to the colonists, a lot of that started because they were not getting representation from the king, not even in the legislatures, which were the king's legislatures in the colonies. So they started revolting against it, and they ended up forming their own country and throwing off the king. Now we have national associations of counties, national associations of governors, national associations all up and down the line. These are progressive people, organizations that are trying to tell us here in Omaha, Nebraska, that we ought to survey everybody. I do not do Facebook. I do not do Netflix. I have dabbled in some of the comments people make to news stories. And I'm glad I don't do Facebook, because a lot of that is hateful, racist, and absolutely stupid stuff. And it's not controlled by us. It's controlled by these big tech companies who are out to get us. Believe it or not, but think about it. What better way with the COVID and this type of thing to shape public opinion? Propaganda. Shake your head, but think about it in terms of history.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this? I think as a board, we talk a lot about how do we get and reach our citizens, how do we engage them in the things and issues that we're dealing with and find out what their feelings are. This is a great opportunity for us. The National Association of Counties has been a huge and wonderful resource for our counties across the country, as well as some of the other national organizations that are out there. So partnering with them and with private enterprise is a win-win for us, especially at the local level, again, where we're trying to find ways to not only reach but engage and talk to our constituents. And so, again, I thank you guys for being here today and making the presentation. We'll have further conversations, and then I'll be back in touch with you. But again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Commissioner.
With that, we'll move to our public hearings. we have a public hearing for a class liquor license for a View West Shores at 110 South 243rd Street in Waterloo. I'll open the public hearing. Is there hello?
Hi.
Anyone here?
I'm just watching time because I have 8 minutes before my parking meter, and I cannot
Okay.
add more time.
All
so.
right, go. And who are
I'm
you?
Brandolyn Goldap, 5820 North 279th Circle, Valley, Nebraska 68064.
Okay. Is there anyone here wishing to speak for or against this liquor license? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What's the will of the board? Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Please vote.
I think Commissioner Mike Boyle may be absent right now.
Yeah.
So motion passes 6-0. Commissioner Mike Boyle is absent. All other commissioners voting yes.
Okay, thank
you very much. And walk fast.
I know.
The next public hearing is to provide additional budget dollars for budget increases for salary adjustments, the health center, community mental health center, and medical insurance costs. These were, again, not budgeted, and it is basically a yearly supplemental that we do at the end of the year. Is there I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
I guess I had a quick question of Joe. Hi.
Hi.
So $903,000 in additional budget dollars for budget increases for salary adjustments at the health center. So we have these regular labor contracts that we do. These are not subject to that, right?
No, this is a labor contract settlement.
Okay, so basically this $903,000 is for a new labor contract?
No, the $120,000 of it, maybe I'll have Karen hand this out, that there was a contract settlement at the health center that involved the health center and the community mental health center, and it was $120,000. And in our salary adjustment fund, we only had $100,000 left. So we have to increase that appropriation by $25,000 to cover this salary, contractual salary settlement.
Okay. Fill me in a little bit on the dispute over a contract. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think there was a dispute. I think it just took a long time to settle, so there was a retroactive payment to it.
Oh, I see. Okay, I understand. And the balance then of the $903,000 is for what?
$378,000 is increasing the health center's budget by the amount of a federal grant that they received to do testing on COVID-19. So they received so there's offsetting revenue, but we just had to up their budget to fund the testing expenses. And then $500,000 is due to employee medical insurance fund. Last year when the pandemic hit, our employees, like most people, stopped going to the doctor, so we had about a $5 million favorable variance in our medical insurance fund because nobody went to the doctor for most of the year. And finally now this year, especially in this quarter that's going to end in June, people are going back to the doctor, and so there's a little bit of catch-up involved, so we needed to add some more money to the medical insurance fund to account for these doctor visits and treatments.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments during the public hearing? With that, I will close the public hearing. Is there, what's the will of the board? Is there a second? Motion by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0. All commissioners present are voting in person.
Next, we'll move to committees, the first being the finance, and it's the budget report as presented. Did you want to say anything, Commissioner Morgan? Or Commissioner Friend?
I usually like to say it once a year. I want to thank Joe for his work and what he does for all of us and trying to hold the line and making us aware of whatever happens. Mike and I have been kind of meeting with him almost every week and appreciate what he does. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to, well, we just have the monthly fee report from the clerk's office. We'll move to administrative services. We have 2 leases. The first is the approval of a lease for adult probation at 4240 South 50th Street, basically 50th and G. It's $6,000 a month. This is budgeted, and this was held over from May 25th. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you stated, this lease was laid over from the May 25th meeting, and we had a couple of discussions on the move of this office from South 24th Street to 50th and G. With me today is the Chief Adult Probation Officer for Douglas County, and if you have any questions of him on the move, he was obviously involved in the move, the request to move, and we respectfully ask for your support today.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments, or is there anything you would like to comment on to the board? No? Okay. There's a motion by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0. All commissioners present voting in person.
Thank you. Next is our approval for lease for the Treasurer's Office at 4606 North 56th Street at $8,250 a month. This is budgeted, and again, we have Jerry Leahy with us. Jerry?
Thank you. Again, Commissioners, this is a relocation of a treasurer's office, branch office from North 30th to 56th and Ames Street. Again, worked very closely with, in this case, an elected official, John Ewing, and John is here today and may have a couple of words. Maybe not.
No, that would be a first if there were no words.
Commissioners, thank you for
Good
the
morning.
opportunity. I'll be very brief. We are looking to always make sure that our facilities are set right in the county so that we can balance demand. Right now, with 156th and Maple and 30th and Potter, we have a huge gap in our service area, and most of those people are going to 156th and Maple, which increases the demand and the wait time there, and has basically dead times at 30th Street. By moving to 56, we close that gap. We also have a better facility. Currently, with that facility on 30th Street, we took 2 employee restrooms and made them one public and one employee because of COVID, and that then creates a safety issue because now they come in to go to the restroom and are behind us with no one back in that empty space anymore with the state moving out. So we're just looking at right-sizing our facilities, putting them in the right locations to meet demand, and then always looking at safety and the amenities for our citizens and employees.
Okay.
With that, I'll
Thank-
answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mr. Ewing, for your foresight. I remember talking to you about this 2 or 3 years ago when 156 and Maple was
Yes.
coming online because of the public safety bond upgrade. And you had a plan in place at that time, anticipating exactly what you're saying is the geographical needs of
Yes.
Douglas County residents. And this is a good response to that need, and I want to applaud you for that. I think it'll probably be good all around. It'll be good for the taxpayers, it'll be good for people seeking services, and it's going to be good for that part of town. So when you get in there and get the build-out done, we look forward to coming and visiting you. I was really impressed with your new operation at 156 in Maple. I think that's state-of-the-art, and hopefully this will be at the same caliber. But thanks again for your heads-up and forward-looking leadership on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have a great partnership with Jerry Leahy and his team. And then certainly my, excuse me, my staff, my Chief Deputy Jane Alexander and my Assistant Chief Deputy Mandy Kincaid do a great job of keeping me in line and telling me what we need to do. So we make a great team because I listen.
Commissioner Morgan?
Just going to ask a question. Are you doing a 5-year lease on 56 and Ames?
10-year.
10-year.
Yes.
That's good. I was going to suggest maybe doing that, and I'm curious, are they doing some of the TI, Jerry? Tenant improvements for us?
Yes, they are.
And that's, you know, why you should do that. And I shouldn't even be talking because Jerry does it just right, but that's great. And thank you for the job all your people do too. I visit the facilities and they're great and friendly. So thank you.
All right, with that, do we have a motion and a second? Commissioner Morgan made the motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0. Those commissioners who are present are in person.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Next are Child and Youth Services. You'll see that there are 2 minutes from the Tuesday, April 20th and Tuesday, May 18th meetings. And then the Community Service, there's also minutes available to review, and that was from our April 27th meeting. And then the next is our Human Resources. It's the weekly personnel report as presented, unless there's questions or comments. And then, of course, we had our legislative issues already, so we don't have anything further on that. We do have need for an executive session for litigation, labor negotiations. Okay? And, yep. Is there, there's a motion to go into executive session by Commissioner Morgan. Is there a second? And before we vote, Commissioner Morgan has asked for a point of privilege.
Okay. I'd just like to express a thank you to the University of Nebraska baseball team. I know last evening was most disappointing in the bottom of the 8th inning, but they've had a great season, and I was so hopeful that they'd make it to the CWS, but they still need to be very, very proud of the players and the coach and all of the work they put in this year for a great season.
That's great, Commissioner Morgan. Thank you. Okay, with that, please vote.
And while you're voting, Madam Chair, was that Commissioner Marine Boyle who made the second?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, there is exactly.
Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent, and so that means motion passes 5-0. All commissioners who voted are in person.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.